finish, Mr. President, I would like to draw your attention to the fact that in spite of the fact that you have not prevented me from speaking, I am grateful for that particular thing.
When interrupting me, you already deprived me of the time that is allowed to me.
Chair. The Chair recognizes the Honorable Dr. Paz, Ambassador of the Government of the Argentine to the United States and its delegate to this conference.
Señor Presidente.
Mr. President, honorable delegates, I am complying with instructions from my government in stating that in accordance with the constitutional procedures of my country, I shall sign the Treaty of Peace with Japan, the draft of which was transmitted to the Argentine Chancellery for study and comment. It has been said that this treaty aspires to establish with Japan a just peace, which will take into account the noble objectives pursued and shall be in harmony with the prevailing norms of international law. We are confident that it will be so, and that the signature of this instrument, which has been called a Treaty of Reconciliation, will be an occasion for agreement and not a source of disagreement. At an hour of the world's history which more than ever needs goodwill and understanding on behalf of the happiness of peoples, which after all are the heirs of the actions taken by governing circles. In that sense, we deem that this opportunity is propitious to reaffirm that Argentina shall cooperate fully for a world in which social justice shall be the rule and where political sovereignty shall be respected in respect for that principle of non-intervention, where the economic freedom of nations will be the rule, assuring to peoples a more worthy and honorable life, and where the rights of man shall be respected, and finally, where the peoples of the world will be able to rule themselves according to their own wishes. We likewise trust that this treaty, which my delegation will sign, will be an apt instrument for the development and progress of the Japanese people, as we are convinced, and we hope they will be, that the raising of the standards of living of people through social justice is the best way to assure their democratic life, inasmuch as misery caused by adverse economic conditions takes peoples into the philosophy of desperation. My government naturally sympathizes with this treaty, which tends to return to the Japanese people their sovereignty, and it will establish juridical basis for happy relationships between the Argentine people and the people of Japan. Let us not forget that in my country, the Japanese community has assimilated itself to its traditions and way of life, tendering its honest and loyal cooperation. I shall point out that despite the fact that the clauses of this instrument are acceptable, there are some points relative to which my delegation wishes to state its interpretative criterion in a very clear manner and requests that this appear in the minutes. With regard to Article 2E, my delegation states clearly for the record its inalienable rights to the Argentine Antarctic area between 25 degrees and 74 degrees west longitude south of parallel 60, besides the Georgian islands. That sector is an integral part of our national territory, and as such, it is a matter essentially of the internal jurisdiction of my country in accordance with Article 2, Paragraph 7 of the Charter of the United Nations. Article 2E of the treaty should be interpreted, therefore, in the light of those provisions of the United Nations Charter, and therefore no clause can oblige that matter to be submitted to other arrangements. As President Perón has stated, Argentina will zealously defend its territorial integrity, and in a pacific defense of its rights, it expresses its iron will that its legitimate rights shall not be altered. With regard to Article 11 of the treaty, our Constitution does not permit that anybody be punished without a due process of law. With regard to Article 14 of the treaty, relative to philanthropic societies, the opinion of Argentina is that their qualification is of the exclusive competence of the state in which the property is located. We understand that Article 22 has a clause of a limitative nature, inasmuch as it provides for the establishment of a special tribunal or other means which should be exhausted before appealing to the jurisdiction of the court. Likewise, the article extends only to the matter of interpretation and execution of the treaty. Therefore, it constitutes an exception which does not modify the strict rule of Article 36 of the Statute of the Court, which provides for the requirement of a formal declaration by the states in order to put into motion their competence. On the other hand, it is obvious that this Article 22 is only applicable to relations between each of the signatories of the treaty on the one hand and Japan on the other. Finally, the Argentine Republic, with regard to the concept of war damage, understands not only those caused by troops, but also those caused by war or the state of war itself. With a full spirit of cooperation, we have set forth our interpretative criterion. We shall sign this peace treaty inspired by the peaceful spirit of our people and our government, which is still working to conquer a better future based upon harmony and not upon hatred, because Argentina does aspire to live with the other nations in a world where social justice shall be the rule, which will assure the dignity of man. I do not wish to end my statement without thanking all those who have extended the most hospitable attention to my delegation in this wonderful city of San Francisco. And I likewise wish to express a testimonial of our appreciation to Dean Acheson, who, as Secretary of State of the United States of America, and Mr. John Foster Dulles, as the principal author of this historic document, have undertaken the enormous responsibility of achieving a text which is acceptable to so many diverse and universal interests. Confident that their efforts in this difficult hour of the world's history will not be vain efforts, we shall sign this treaty. Thank you.
Your Excellencies, the conclusion of the list of delegations to speak happily coincides with the arrival of our recess for dinner. As we convene at 8 o'clock this evening, we have before us the giving of an opportunity to the delegation of Japan to be heard, and also the necessity of charting the future course of the conference under Rule 18. We shall therefore meet at 8 o'clock for that and any other purposes you decide upon.
And thus ends the 7th plenary session of the Japanese Peace Treaty Conference here in the War Memorial Opera House in San Francisco. This session this afternoon of producing no surprises except perhaps in the comparative mildness of the presentation of the delegate from Poland, Mr. Werblowski. Mr. Werblowski, who has been quite bitter in denunciation of the treaty and other arrangements in the past. Today, although he, of course, repeated all of the old Polish lines that United States action is endangering peace in the Far East, that this treaty does that very thing, that it was the Russian army that helped pin down some of the best Japanese troops, therefore paving the way for victory. All of that Mr. Werblowski repeated today, but did not get more vituperative than that. And so tonight we hear Mr. Yoshida, the Japanese premier, speak to the conference, and then a decision on future proceedings. The peace treaty signing to come sometime tomorrow. You have been present at the Japanese Peace Conference, brought to you by the television networks and stations of the United States.